with another round of Turing Mock Interview series. I'm Love, a full stack developer at Turing. I'm from Surat, India, and I have experience in working with React, Node, JavaScript, React Native, and among other tech stacks. Today, I'll be having Bello with us. I'll be interviewing him for the experienced PHP developer. So, hi, Bello. Let's hear from you. How are you doing, and how was your day so far?
Hi, Lab. I'm doing fine. My day was great.
Okay, so can you tell us more about yourself and your professional experience?
Thank you, Love. I'm from Lagos, Nigeria. My professional experience started about 6-7 years ago. I have experience working with PHP, Java, JavaScript, but I'm more familiar with PHP because I've worked on PHP for a longer period of time. I've worked on also the PHP frameworks, CodeIgniter, Laravel, and Kick PHP.
Oh, I see, like 6 years, that a lot of development, and like I see you have worked with JavaScript, Java, and like you are more of a PHP developer.
Yeah.
So can you tell me more about some interesting projects you have done with PHP, where like you can share something challenging and what the solutions you have used?
I've built ERPs with PHP. I've also worked on the crime reporting app, web app, and a mobile app that had its backend, its API run on PHP. I've also built some e-commerce software with PHP. So yeah, just at the top of the list.
Okay. Anything you want to share which is like challenging for you while working on that?
Mostly is about just translating the requirement into actual stuff. That gap between requirement definition and actual implementation is the most challenging part, but
Yeah.
it's interesting to solve.
Okay. Okay. Now let's jump on to PHP itself. Can you tell us main types of error which are present in PHP?
We have three main types of errors. We have notices, we have warnings, we have fatal errors. Notices are minor errors that you can ignore, but you should fix, but your application will run if you don't fix them. Warnings are more like notices, but are more critical than notices in the sense that they can cause your application to malfunction. Fatal errors are fatal. That's pretty obvious. They will cause your application to crash if you don't fix them.
Okay, so in a quick summary, notices you can ignore them, but you should be fixing them.
Yeah.
Warnings that are more critical than notices, you should be fixing them to make sure that your build doesn't break. And fatal errors that won't let your code work, so you should be fixing the fatal errors.
Definitely.
Uh, yes. So moving on to next questions. Can you tell us about traits and how does it differ from interfaces?
So for starts, they are both similar in terms of they are used for object-oriented programming for code reusability. But the difference is that the methods in traits are implemented, meaning that they are defined and the instructions have been written. But for interfaces, the methods are just defined but not implemented. So if I were to make an analogy, I would say, assume you have two army, right? And then one army has a trace instruction, and another army has a interface instruction, right? The army with the trace instruction, they both have go, shoot, and duck, right? The guys with the trace instruction will have go, and it will define how they should go. It will define how they should shoot, and it's also define how they should duck. But the ones with the interfaces would only have go, duck, and shoot, but with the instruction not defined, and it will be up to the soldier to define how they want to go, how they want to duck, and how they want to shoot. So that's the major difference between traits and interfaces.
Yeah, that makes sense. And can you tell us the order of precedence that traits follow in PHP?
Yeah. So the method in traits, the method in the base class takes the highest precedence, like the subclass, followed by the methods in the trait, followed by the method in the parent class. So if we had, let's say we had a class car that extends from a class vehicle and implements, use a trait, um, let's just call it a trait, right? And we
Yes.
had move we have move in the vehicle class, we have move in the car class, and we have move in the traits. Whenever you call the move function on the car class, the move inside the car class, the implementation of move inside the car class is what's going to be run, because that's what takes precedence. If you do not have move inside the car class, but you have move in your traits and you have move in your vehicle class, which is the parent class, the implementation of move inside the trait is what's going to be run. But if you don't have it in your car, which is the subclass, and you don't have it in your trait, which is the trait, and have it in your vehicle, which is the parent class, that is the one that's going to be run.
Yes, that completely makes sense. Okay, moving on to next question. What is memcache, and can you tell us about memcaching in PHP?
So basically, meme cache is one of the ways of caching. Caching basically is a way of storing data temporarily, so that you don't have to hit your database all the time. So memcache uses a caching a memory on the server to cache data. So the idea behind it is that we write into the memcache rather than write directly into the database, and then the memcache writes into the server. And then when we want to retrieve data, we retrieve data from the memcache rather than getting the data from the database directly. That way we can reduce the load on the database server. As
Okay,
for
so like basically to avoid like multiple operations ongoing with the database, we can use memcaching.
yeah,
So whenever like you are making a request, memcache will be used, and whatever the new results will be there, it will be returned back to database,
so
right?
so instead of 1,000 people hitting the database concurrently, 1,000 people will be hitting memcache,
Yeah,
and that
and
memcache can
that will be much faster compared to database calls.
yeah.
Okay, so with that said, can we use a single instance of memcache between several projects that are running with PHP?
So memcache basically runs on memory. So yeah, you can multiple instances of PHP can share the same memcache. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically like we can have different projects that can be using the same memcaching, and like that way we can reduce the database calls, and that can be more faster search operations or any other operations we are doing there, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. So moving forward, can you tell us about PDO in PHP?
So PDO stands for PHP Data Objects, and the idea behind it is to be able to interface with several databases. So it's a data access abstraction that makes it possible for you to interface with any database in terms of getting the database, getting data from the database, writing into the database with a single implementation or a single method, so that if you want to switch between databases, you don't have to rewrite your queries or rewrite how your data is being returned. It's just one query, one data structure for all kinds of database, regardless of if you are using free TDS, my SQL server, regardless of the servers, as long as the database server supports PDO, you can use it.
Yes, so like basically we can have multiple connections ongoing with PDOs, right?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can.
Okay. So can you like as we are discussing about database, can you tell us how we can create a new database by using MySQL and PHP?
So first you establish the connection with the MySQLi connect instruction. Then you validate that their connection was successful by checking if the variable that holds the MySQL connect has a value in it. Then you write your queries using the PHP provided functions to write queries inside, and then you execute the query with the provided functions from the PHP.
Okay. And can you tell us like once we are connected with the what we say database, uh, what are the ways that we can handle different result sets of MySQL? Like we are when we are requesting, it can return a different different data structure for each result set. So can you tell us how we can
Yeah,
handle that?
so that's dependent on the discretion of the developer and what kind of data is trying to access. So if you want your results to be returned as an array, you use the MySQLi fetch array. If you want it, and then when you get as an array, depending on the kind of data you get from the database, it could be a numeric array, that is the ones that have the keys to be 0, 1s, 2s, and then the value. It could also be an associative array where the name of the field in the table is the key to the data. If you want it to definitely be an associative array, meaning you want it to be that the name of the field in the table should be the key to the data, then you do use MySQLi fetch assoc. But if you always want it to return it as an object, you'd use MySQLi fetch object. If you want it as an array, a numeric array, then you use MySQLi fetch row. So it depends on how you want your data. You can use any of these 4 methods: fetch array, fetch assoc, fetch object, or fetch row. MySQLi fetch assoc, MySQLi fetch,
Okay.
but MySQLi fetch row.
Okay, so that's like basically 4 different methods which supports
Yes.
like array, associative arrays, objects, and rows. So with that, moving to next question. What are clauses and how we use in PHP, and like why does it have that use identifier with this?
Okay, so closures are basically anonymous functions. So normally functions that you'd have to define a function, define the name of the function, and define the parameters that the function should take. But closures are a little bit a step aside from that. They are still functions, but we don't define them in the sense that we don't give them names. They are anonymous functions. And we use because whenever you create a closure, it's a different namespace from the file of the object you're working with. So you need to be able to pass or bind the parameters that you want that function to use. You want the closure to use inside itself to it. And to be able to tell the function that I want you to use these variables inside you is when we use the use identifier. So basically when we use the use identifier, we are copying the values inside the closure we are defining.
Okay, so as far as I understand what you said, when like if we are not going to use that use keyword, we will not have our variables bind with that, and we won't be able to use them inside that particular function, right?
Yes, so it will not be able to use any variable defined outside of the closure if we don't use the
Yeah.
use identifier. Yes.
Yeah, so we should always make sure to do the bindings, otherwise the variables won't be accessible.
Yeah, you
Okay.
get a undefined error, a warning.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so like as we are discussing the binding, can you tell us what are the late static bindings in PHP?
So let's static binding is a new concept that not new concept rather. It's a concept that was introduced to solve a problem that happens with inheritance, right? So I'm going to answer the question using analogies. So if you use the self keyword inside inherited classes. So let's go back to the vehicle and car class I told. So let's assume the base class is vehicle and the inherited class is car. If you want to reference let's say inside the vehicle, we have a move function. And inside the move function, there is a method that says self : do something, right? If you call self : do something inside the car, it's going to refer to the do something that is inside vehicle. Now, there are sometimes that we wanted to refer to do something that we've defined inside car, which is the inherited class. To do that, we have to do a late binding. And to be able to do a late binding, that's when we introduce the static keyword. So instead of saying self : do something, we say static : do something. And in that case, it's going to refer to the late class, which is the vehicle, which is the car class rather.
Okay, so like in general summary, you have two classes, vehicle and car. You have move function inside vehicle, and when you want to call that particular function from car, and like you want to do some different operations for move function inside a car, you can mention move function inside car, which should be statically bind it, so that is like lit static binding. And when
Yeah.
you do call that particular function like car.move, it will be calling that particular move function from car, and that should be it. So like it will be you will be able to like get that particular move function with your custom logic apart from your vehicle's move logic.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So for next, can you tell us what does yield mean in PHP?
So yield is a keyword that is used for generator functions. So generator functions are functions that we use in loops to generate a value for every iteration. So for example, if I wanted to have a method, right, that loops through a range of values and then return the value in the loop, I'll use a yield. So let's say I create a function that says loop range, right? And I say loop range minimum and color maximum. Inside the loop range, I will yield, and I can say for minimum equals to 0, blah, 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 I plus plus, yield I. So what happens is every time that loop goes through, at the point where it needs a value, the value that you yielded is what is going to be used for that particular iteration in the loop. That's what yield is for.
Yes, generator functions are pretty much new concept, I guess, and like
Yeah.
it is being used in what we say in JavaScript nowadays as well. So like if you are familiar with generator functions and you are learning JavaScript, you can keep that in mind, and that will be helpful for you as well. Okay, so moving to next question, can you tell us the difference between include and require functions?
So first I'll start with similarities again. Both are used to add a file, an external file into another file. So the major difference is for include, right? If you include a file and the file doesn't exist, the script continues to run, right? Because it's not critical. But if you do a require, if the file doesn't exist, the script won't run because it must exist for the script to run. So that's the major difference between include and require.
Yeah, so basically like the keyword say, include is just going to include your file, but it won't be crashing your code. But if you are
Yeah.
requiring a particular file, that means you need that particular file to execute the next sort of code. So that file
Yes,
must be present, otherwise it will just throw a compile time error to you, correct?
exactly. Going back to the error question that you asked me, include will throw you a notice, right? And then require will throw a fatal error. So
Yeah, so like if you are including a file which is missing, you will see a notice, and like if that file is not majorly required on what code you are executing, you can ignore that particular notice. But in general terms, you should be fixing all the notices, warnings, so that your console remains clear. And for require, there is always a compile time error. So in any case, you won't be able to go ahead and test your code, whatever you have done. So it will be like
yeah,
a fatal error. Correct?
yeah.
Okay. So Bello, for next question, can you tell us the use of session start and session destroy functions, which we use for end user sessions?
So I'll start with what sessions are. So we use sessions to temporary data um, in PHP. So session start and session destroy is how we tell the PHP server that. And so we use session start to tell the PHP server that I'm about to create a session variable. And we use session destroy to tell the PHP server that I'm done with this session variable. You can now delete these variables that I've created. So to define a session variable, you need session starts to tell the server, I'm starting to create this session variable, and session destroy to say, I'm done with this variable, you can now destroy it. That's the use of session start and session destroy.
Yeah, so basically like when users are logging in into our system, we can start their sessions, and as soon as they are going to log out, we should be destroying their sessions to keep their account secure and make our applications more reliable.
Correct.
Okay, with that, do you have any particular PHP questions that are tricky you have found while like giving any interviews or while working with PHP?
Sorry?
You are working with PHP from last 6 years. So do you have any tricky questions in mind which you want to share with us, so that we can just know about how those tricky questions have been and how you have solved them?
So one of the tricky questions is referring to a variable by reference and by what's the other one?
By
Uh,
value?
by reference and by value. Yes, so that's a very tricky question in PHP, and I think people should look into.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah,
really confusing when you are using value by reference or value directly. So
yeah.
I would suggest everyone to go over that whenever you are preparing for your PHP interviews. Thank you, Balo. It was really nice speaking with you. To everyone else, thank you for tuning in to this mock interview series. I hope you really enjoyed this as much as I did with Balo. And we will be back with many more episodes covering different tech stacks, different technologies, and different frameworks. If you are looking for some specific mock interviews, please drop in your suggestions in the comment section below. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, like the video, share it with your PHP devs so that they can learn about these equations, and it will be really helpful for them. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Take care, stay safe, and happy coding.